If you've ever watched or read Bakuman or look back, you might be familiar with the concept of taking a work to an editor to get an actual review. You might also know about this process if you've read the book The Shonen Jump Guide to Making Manga, where we follow like this young aspiring mangaka through the process of like being a complete noob with like no sequential pages, all the way to being like a serialized mangaka. And a lot of experiences start with Mochikomi. Mochikomi is essentially that. You can either make an appointment or you can walk into various publishers and actually have your work reviewed live, like right there with an editor. It's pretty freaking cool. And the Kodansha house this year decided that they wanted to host one of these events. They called it Mochikomi Fresh Ink. And essentially, in early, like, I think it was like late July actually, they posted about it on their social media, and they said that in August we're going to like accept submissions. I think they only accepted like the first 1,000 entries. But yeah, so I of course submitted, and I of course got in, and that's why I'm here to talk to you guys today. So hi everyone, I'm Artcrumbs. Welcome to my channel. I'm trying to be more consistent, like one video a week maybe. Let's start there first. Hi guys, Future Artcrumbs here. I just wanted to let you guys know that if you want to get like straight to the feedback, I would definitely recommend using the chapters that I've added in my description and in the pinned comment. I didn't want this video to just be, hey, here's my feedback, and then like that's it. I wanted to sort of talk about the whole experience, like how I applied, who's my editor, what's his history, what's the history of the magazine, as well as like my thoughts on the feedback and how I plan to utilize it in the future. I really wanted it to be a thorough video, which is why it's almost like 45 minutes long, not just like, you know, wham bam done. You know what I mean? So yeah, thank you, and hope you enjoy the video. But I was so privileged to get to talk to an editor at Kodansha. Specifically, I ended up talking with Tabuchi Kouji of Morning Magazine, and he's not just like an editor, he's something called the deputy editor-in-chief, and so basically he is sort of like an assistant to the editor-in-chief. And I'd really love to, it was such an insightful meeting, and I would really love to get to share this with you guys. So we didn't know this at the time when we applied, but they would actually split us into two different groups, those of us that got accepted into the Mochikomi event. They had half of us like before New York Comic Con, and they had the other half of us after New York Comic Con. Comic Con itself was from the 8th to the 12th, if you want to count like retailer day, which I do, because I go to New York Comic Con on behalf of Global Comics, and so having it before New York Comic Con was really advantageous for me, because what that meant was I could just fly out just a little bit early, and thankfully Global Comics was willing to help me with that, getting out there a little early, which is really great. Super privileged. But anyway, so like on Tuesday the 7th, I did like a little work for Global Comics in the morning, and kind of got myself geared up to like miss a good chunk of the day. And then I started heading down towards the Kodansha house. I was really nervous, and I was like, I mean, I've met with Hisashi-san so many times that, like, for me, meeting with Hisashi-san isn't, like, a big deal. I still get a little bit nervous every time, because it's like, dude, it's Hisashi Sasaki. Like, I'm gonna get a little nervous every single time. But yeah, so I wanted something to drink, so I got a little matcha on my way there, and when I got there, like, the Kodansha house itself wasn't open yet, and so I just kind of like mingled outside with some of the other creators or some of their supporters, and there were even just like some general fans that were like waiting for it to open. And while I was out there, I met Misaki, who would end up being like my interpreter for the talk that I had with my editor later, and she's like super sweet, super bubbly. Like, I absolutely adore Misaki. And once we were let in, we were led downstairs to like the lowest level of the Kodansha house, and there were like little like cloth partitions set up between us, you know, just to like give like a little bit of privacy, right? And the photo that I have that I'm showing you guys right now is actually taken from like the 14th Mochikomi. But I wanted to just share this so you guys could get an idea of the environment. And it did feel a little open. I was kind of expecting like maybe like a private room or something, like one of us at a time. Like, I wasn't expecting it to just be out in the open, but it ended up working out fine. I didn't even like hear or notice anybody else, but I know that my voice carries. I have just one of those voices where like I can be speaking completely normally and you can hear me on the opposite end of the room. I have one of those voices, so I was kind of more worried about disturbing other people than like being disturbed. But I see why they wanted to do it this way. It, you know, makes it, I don't know, like, it's easier to set up, right? Like, it's not as much as having to get like a separate room for everybody. And I actually sat like on the far left of like where this picture was. But there were actually, I think, like 6 or like maybe 6 or 7 total tables at a time. And then each of us submitted our work online, right? I mentioned that earlier, that, you know, July they announced it, and then in August they actually accepted the submissions. And they said, hey, we have editors from this magazine, like these different titles, but they didn't actually like give anyone's names. And we didn't know, like, when we got the acceptance letter, we did not know who we were paired with. So I was walking in completely blind. And Onami is more of a shonen, and so at least that was my intention. And so like I was really nervous that I'd be paired with a shonen editor. If I'm being completely honest, I did not want to be paired with a shonen editor because that's not really what I want to make. But to my surprise and pleasure, I was paired with, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Tabuchi Kouji, who's like deputy editor-in-chief of Morning Magazine, which is one of the magazines I wanted to talk to. So I was very, very excited. He's done quite a few like really cool manga. Like Space Brothers, I think is like the first one that comes to mind. But also G Sweet Home is something that's in the same magazine. I don't know if he worked on that one, but I know it's in the same magazine. Billy Bat and Vagabond. Giant Killing, Cooking Papa, Planetis, What Did You Eat Yesterday? Like all of that is in this magazine. But yeah, so he's one of the guys who basically like helps greenlight serializations. You know, as far as like, you know, like a higher up editor. And so I was really bracing myself for like brutal feedback. I was kind of scared, honestly. But it like we kind of introduced ourselves, and then we got into like the actual feedback session of Onami pretty fast. And he broke my feedback session down into like 2 different parts: the visuals feedback and then the writing and story feedback. I took notes on like my Galaxy tab kind of like as we went along, because I had to submit a PDF anyway. I went ahead and just like sent the PDF to myself on my like Galaxy tablet, and there's a feature called like Notebook that you can open PDFs in, and then you can just write on top of it, like redlining, right? It was so useful to be able to do that. But he told me before we actually like really got into it that like he's one person, it's just one opinion, and to like take all of his advice with salt, because the advice that they were giving us was like based on like the Japanese market. Like if you want to get into the Japanese market, like this is stuff that you have to consider. But I still think that a lot of the advice that he gave is relevant to both, but I can see why they would give like that warning in advance. And I mean, I'm used to like, you know, like Hisashi Sasaki, my editor at Viz, like I'm used to, he says the same thing, like I'm just one person, I'm just one opinion. You know, so always, I think that's just something good to consider anytime you're going in for feedback from anyone, whether they're an editor or like, you know, like a fellow artist in a Discord server with you. Like it's just always one opinion, right? So moving on to like the actual feedback. The feedback for Onami was like based on the notes that they actually sent me notes afterwards, which it was like, then why was I writing my own notes? But I don't know, maybe they were surprised at how many people were taking notes and thought to write everything. But the positive feedback for Onami that I got reads as this: your artwork is remarkably consistent and confident. The balance between long shots, medium shots, and occasional close-ups gives the pages a strong sense of rhythm and dynamism, making the story easy to follow. Artists who are less confident in their drawing ability often rely too heavily on close-up panels, but your use of distance and perspective feels well balanced. The background perspective is solid as well, which helps elevate the overall quality of the work. And so to kind of like break this down to like my reflection on this, hearing that my backgrounds and perspective is stuff that like I'm used to hearing. I'm used to hearing that my art is like pretty decent, you know, or nice, or, you know, whatever, insert like nice word about it. But what I really liked about this particular bit of feedback, and he pointed this out too, like when we were in person, basically everything that I'm reading is stuff that he said in just another form when we were in person. But what I really appreciated that he pointed out is my use of like the different shots for, like, you know, like long shot, medium shot, close-ups. I really appreciate that, because I learned that stuff when I was studying animation. Maybe you guys don't know, I actually have my first degree is in graphic design and rich media with a focus on animation. And so, like, my first degree is just a 2-year degree. I spent a year of learning 3D and a year of learning 2D. But I also learned, you know, things like, you know, Photoshop and InDesign and whatever, Illustrator, all those things. And I learned a lot about visual narrative, which is basically just telling stories with pictures, and it includes everything from like magazines to sorry, my brain just stopped. Magazines to manga to movies to commercials, and like a puppetry and a billion other things. It's just telling stories with visual images. Well, not images, like visual with visuals. English is hard this morning. But so I took all of those things that I learned from that, and I took them with me when I learned about comics and when I learned about manga. And I had like a visual narrative class, like specifically like making comics, that I also took when I was in my second degree, which was illustration at Ringling. And so I kind of already had like a bias towards stuff like storyboarding, and one of my teachers at Ringling was Gary Barker, who's been drawing Garfield for now like 40 years. At the time, I think it was only like 30. I say only. He'd been drawing Garfield longer than I was alive. Let's put it that way. When I met him. And he kind of was like, hey, like, you have this like basis in visual narrative. Have you thought about doing comics? And so it's because of Mr. Barker that I ended up kind of getting into comics, and then eventually moved into manga. But I don't know, it was just really nice to see someone actually point that out and say, hey, I recognize this. And I mean, Hisashi-san has said the same thing. He's pointed out how good my komawari is. Komawari is like I guess you could call it paneling theory, is like the best way I can describe it. Is it's like, how do you decide like how the panels flow, what's inside the panels, you know, the things like your camera shots, camera distance, whatever, like all of that stuff is komawari. But yeah, I wasn't super surprised about the comments, but it was really nice to like have like the cinematic touches I try to do on purpose get noticed. Gave me some advice on like how to take my work from more of like a shonen level to like a seinen, which is, you know, my goal, right? And so he said, speaking from my perspective as an editor who works primarily with adult-oriented manga, I'd like to offer a few thoughts specific to that genre. I can't not say something. If you know, you know. When panels are tilted, or when characters frequently break out of the panel borders, it can sometimes disrupt the flow of reading in a more mature comic. Keeping these effects a bit more restrained can create a calmer, more cinematic feel that suits an adult readership. It's often said that shonen manga are like concerts or circuses, flashy and explosive, while shoujo manga resemble stage plays where characters can theatrically step out towards the audience. In contrast, seinen manga are closer to film, where realism takes the priority and the characters remain grounded within the frame. And so I have like a couple examples that I'll be showing you like on the screen, where when he talks about like characters like theatrically like stepping out of the frame here, I think in like the Western comic community we call them like breakout panels, or sometimes they're called overlay panels. It just kind of depends. I think I use the term breakout panels personally, but basically it's sort of like when a character is like floating on top of a panel, or like some of the artwork is inside the panel and then like the character itself is outside of the panel, or, you know, something like that. I have a couple examples here, but I actually wanted to test this, and so I read some seinen manga that I have at home, and I was really surprised because I was like, no freaking way. How did I never notice this? And it's absolutely true. I think the most like crazy example of this was Frieren. So Frieren is a Seinen manga, and when I read it, the other thing that I noticed, and Tabuchi-san, said this as well. In manga, you have Masugu Goma and Naname Goma. Masugu Goma are like panels that have like perfectly 90-degree angles, and Naname Goma have not perfect 90-degree angles. I think like the technical word is like oblique panels. And so you have like them at weird angles. I did not see a single Naname Goma in volume 1 of Frieren. If there is one, I missed it. But they're all like perfectly like square corners. And that was something that I've never really considered, because a lot of the manga that I've read, they have these really cool angles in them. And that's sort of one of the things that he felt could take my work from more shonen to seinen, is seinen focuses on a more cinematic, mature view of things. Like you're watching a TV drama, but in book form. So like, which is makes perfect sense to me. So I'd never thought about that before. But yeah, like I really enjoyed having Onami as a frame of reference, because like I'm hearing basically like how to take what I've already made and alter it to become something that I would like to do. Even though Onami, I don't think I would take from a shonen to seinen. I think I would rather just work on something different. I think the biggest regret of the event, honestly, is that I didn't get to submit Godsbane. And the reason I didn't get to submit Godsbane is because it wasn't near ready. At the time, I was still working on like redrawing chapter 1 of Godsbane. I almost said Onami. Chapter 1 of Godsbane. And I didn't have anything that was actually ready to submit. And so I was like, well, the only thing I have ready to submit is Onami. So like YOLO, let's do it. And I did bring up that like Godsbane like exists as a doujinshi that I'm working on. And he did seem curious about it, and I said, oh, like I am like working on this one to be more seinen. And he's like, yeah, like if you want to submit things to me, like that's perfectly fine. Like, just submit it, and like make sure like my name's in the subject line, and I can respond to you. But I've been working on like a new drawing style that I want to feel more mature, and like sketches and stuff. And he did say that there is a new award coming out next year, as well as an opportunity to submit to like the Young Magazine USA edition, which is something that they also mentioned in the sort of like editorial QA panel that they have. Like at the end of the days. So on the 7th and the 14th, they had like our Mochikomi, and then they had the rest of their usual day. And then at the end of that, they had like an editorial panel where like all of the editors were sitting on a panel together talking about the Kodansha Manga Academy, if you guys have seen that announcement, as well as, like the submissions for like the Young Magazine USA and stuff. So really, really excited to see like the future of that. But to kind of get back to the feedback, I think the toughest bit of the feedback was like about the emotions. As far as like how I displayed the emotions, and seinen tends to be like more realistic, like it not only like in its cinematography and its paneling, but also like in how the characters express themselves. And this is what Tabuchi-san had to say about this specific stuff, and again, this is verbatim from the feedback that he gave me. In the same vein, for adult-oriented storytelling, you can add greater depth by restraining facial expressions and conveying emotional complexity through subtler performances. While younger characters in shonen works express emotions directly, very obviously joy, anger, sorrow, and so on, adults tend to display emotions that differ from what they really feel inside. The best actors, those often regarded as the great performers, excel at expressing the dissonance between outward expression and their inner emotion. Essentially, what he's meaning here is that as adults, we understand that to interact and live in society, sometimes we can't be honest with how we're actually feeling. I think this is especially true in Japanese culture with, like the tatemae thing. But I actually have this mouse pad. I'm going to show it to you guys. I've had it for a very long time, so I'm sorry it's not the prettiest thing, but it's literally a dumpster on fire. It says, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. Because the world could be burning around me. And if I'm on a call with someone, like I have to act like everything is fine, nothing's wrong. I don't know if it's called manpu when it comes to manga, but like the backgrounds will also provide emotional context. That's one of the things that I tell people with your backgrounds. I'm like, is your background showing like spatial awareness? Is your background showing a change to the environment? Is your background showing emotional context? Like all of that stuff really, really matters when displaying emotions on the characters. It's not just how they are, like what their face looks like or what their hands are doing or like how they carry themselves. Like, are their shoulders hunched up? Are your shoulders really down? Like all of that stuff plays into emotions, right? And what's really interesting about this is I personally really struggle to express my emotions and understand other people's emotions due to some of the stuff that has happened in my life. I'm happy just like I'm like, I can say happy. I'm like fine to share what it is. But I have like complex PTSD and like I struggle with emotional detachment. All of which I'm actually in therapy for, and I've been in therapy for like 7 years at least. Like, well, the PTSD I've been in therapy kind of off and on for I'd say maybe the last like 15 years. I've not had like super consistent therapy because I didn't always have health insurance. But when I have had health insurance, I've always like been going to a therapist to sort of like unpack those things. And one of the things that I've learned is that I have neurospiciness, and my neurospiciness is that I really struggle with facial expressions, and sometimes I struggle to read a room. And sometimes it makes me really socially awkward, but like I'm never trying to be mean. I've had times where like people will be like, oh my gosh, like Artcrumbs, like why are you being so grumpy right now? And I'm like, I am? Like nothing's wrong, I'm not mad. And then they're like, well, your face looks like you're mad. I'm like, oh, that's just my resting bitch face. But it's more than a resting bitch face. Like they're like, no, like your tone of voice sounds like you're angry. And I'm like, it does? Oh, I'm sorry. Like I didn't know. And so stuff like sometimes that, even just it's little stuff like that can make it really hard for me to engage with someone, because I can feel fine and I'm neutral and I'm having a good time, and someone will be like, why are you mad? And I'm like, I'm not. But now I'm mad that you say that I'm mad. so it makes it really complicated, because and then when I'm reading other people, like sometimes I can be like, oh, yeah, like they looked absolutely fine, it's all good, and then like my friend will be like, no, like they were really mad, you couldn't tell? And I'm like, no. They were? What made you think they were mad? So for me, this makes it really hard to, if I have a hard time just navigating everyday life, right? With like understanding what emotions I'm putting out, meaning that like, do my facial expressions and my tone of voice and my body language, do they all match? Like if I have trouble doing that, and if I have trouble reading other people, it makes it really hard for me to write believable characters that like match up. I didn't explain like any of this to him because I didn't want to like sound like I'm making excuses. And so we kind of like moved on to like the next bit of feedback, which like wasn't like bad, but it did make me just a little bit nervous for like a couple reasons. So his next bit of feedback was, the story's premise itself is highly original and enjoyable, and the creature designs and settings served as excellent visual eye candy. One suggestion would be to reveal a bit more of the underlying origin or mythology behind your fantasy world, to help readers immerse themselves more deeply. Since the story seems to draw motifs of the sea and sea gods, I was wondering if it might have been inspired by Polynesian mythology. If so, incorporating cultural elements such as tattoos could help enrich the world building. For example, in Demon Slayer, Muzan Kibutsuzi I'm gonna butcher oh my god. For example, in Demon Slayer, Muzan Kibutsuji is entirely the author's invention, yet the concept of Oni draws from Japan's traditional idea of demons from another realm, something deeply rooted in the national psyche. Using motifs inherited from long-standing cultural traditions rather than creating everything purely from scratch can lend the story greater authenticity and make it easier for readers to emotionally connect with the world that you've built. And he is correct. Part of the inspiration is Polynesian mythology. That's one of many inspirations that I've had over the course of writing Onami, which started in 2016. But I guess the reason why it makes me just a little bit nervous is like, I don't really have a culture of my own that I can talk about. I'm like, as boring, bland, white bread American as you could possibly think of. You know, like whatever American culture is what I have, and to me, there is no such thing. It's just a blending of everyone else's culture. I sort of just pulled like culture and influence from all over the region, which I was inspired by. And I think what's important here is, before I go any further, is why did I pick that region? You know, the reason I ended up choosing that was because the two main characters that I originally made for Godsbane was Coco, who was inspired initially by a kiwi and then kind of more of a rail, which is a type of bird, if you did not know. And then Auk, which is like a fox dole thing. And so the area where those two creatures live is like South Asia. Flightless birds and doles. South Asia. And that's why I picked it. I didn't pick it because I was like, ooh, Asia culture is far superior than Americans. That's not why I picked it. I picked it because that's what geologically made the most sense for where these animals would live. So that's why I picked it. And so then I decided to make a fictional island out in the middle of the ocean of like where these guys would live. You know, but when I was, you know, creating Godsbane and writing the story, like I researched all kinds of things. I researched like obviously like the cultures, as far as like, you know, like how do they act, where do they eat, you know, like what sort of festivals do they have, you know, how do they approach life from a variety of angles, you know, what is their literature, how do they write, how do they record their literature, mythologies and geographics, like what's the science of the region like, what's the climate like, what's the animal biodiversity like, what are there ancient trade routes that existed in this region, and then like even like as far as like for the years that Godsbane exists, as far as like in a story which is 1891, what celestial events happened there, and what natural disasters happened in the past that I could use to help write my story. You know what I mean? So there's so much there that I did research of, and I mean it's taken me 16 years to do all of this research. And I want to represent, because I've done that research because I want to represent the area as accurately as possible, even through like the culture, even though the culture that I've made is entirely fake. And I guess the best way I can frame it is I want Godsbane, the island of Nor, to be like Atlantis. Like I want it to have been possible that it existed, but it's all fake. You know, like I would be able to wonder if it was real. You know, and so, you know, thinking of things like, you know, the biomes and vegetation, you know, all of that stuff, you know, like here's an example, like here's an image that I made of like what does the island look like from a biome perspective, from a 3D perspective, like, and then like a map of like where the main characters are from, and then sort of like where like where is everything placed, like where are the sacred sites placed, you know, that type of thing. Like I've gone through and I've done like so much research on this, and the last thing that I would want to do is to appear to be like orientalist or like appropriating, and that's something I'm extremely conscious about. I've never had complaints about it before. I have had people say, hey, like this, you know, is really inspired by this culture, you know, do you know what that means, you know? And so like anytime I get that type of feedback or that type of conversation comes up, I'm like, I would love for you to tell me so that I can make sure that am I representing this in a fair way and not just stealing a concept to use like for my own, you know, right? Like I don't want to like twist it in a way that's not appropriate, and that's why I don't take things directly from any culture. Like I don't just take it and throw it in my manga. I always make like an alternative version of something. That way I'm not just like stealing stuff, you know what I mean? But like I said, I'm open to that type of feedback, and if anyone has ever felt that way about my work, I want you to tell me. I just want to stay respectful, and I want to be respectful even if I'm portraying a fake culture that's inspired by those things. And I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but anyway, you know, after we went over like that part, we sort of started talking a little bit about like some of the future stuff and like what I would need to send, and that's when we talked about the awards, and he would really love me to submit. But it was overall a really wonderful experience, and you know, I have a lot to think about. And as I mentioned before, like I was thinking about making or I was thinking about submitting Godsbane for this, and so with everything that we talked about, I would like to make it a one-shot for Godsbane. I'm going to finish the one-shot. I'm going to get it all the way through. And you know, my goodness, if Viz rejects like the one shot that I'm currently working on, I'll just submit it to Kodansha when the time comes. And you know, like the session ended like pretty abruptly, so like that's why like I'm kind of like, what do I talk about next? Because it ended really abruptly. They actually like ran out of time, and they were like, hey, you need to go for the next person can come in. You know, so I'm working on a new Godsbane one shot, and I'm thinking that maybe the story is going to sort of be about like how Aros got into the situation, because I talk a lot about Aros, but I don't really think in many of the pilots that I've done I've done like 8 pilots. I don't really think I've gone in and like actually explained why Aros did this, except for like one of them. You know, like now that I'm home and like reflecting on everything, there's times to level up and there's times to focus on consistency. And I don't think those two are mutually exclusive, but I feel like it's good to identify like anytime you're working on a project or anytime you're doing stuff, or maybe even if you feel stuck, which I have really felt stuck the last couple months. You know, there's times to level up and there's times to focus on consistency. And I feel like now is one of those level up times. I've been given a lot of really, really great feedback by Viz and Kodansha over the years. And I feel like working with Viz, I've had to just constantly level up. I did that for like about 1.5 years, and I guess I kind of got a little burned out for a bit. But I mean, I've also moved, and I've had multiple cats pass away in the last year, and it's just been a really rough year. You know, and so I kind of just like focused on like recovery and figuring out where I needed to be and what I want to do, you know, because to be honest, like wanting to become a mangaka just seems like a pointless thing sometimes to me, because even if I got serialized right now, like could I survive in the American economy? And like, would I be able to get a work visa to go to Japan? You know, if I were serialized by like Kodansha, you know, so like, how would that work? Like, it feels like an insurmountable mountain sometimes. And it's kind of scary. But like, I also want to be able to look back on how far I've come and appreciate how close I am to the goal, which to me is serialization. I never want to be ungrateful, but you can I guess you can lose sight of like the perspective of like where you started from and where you are now if you kind of get too deep in your own head. You know, like, you know, can't see the forest through the tree kind of thing. But yeah, this is long enough. I really appreciate you guys listening to me. If you are a member on my Patreon, I actually uploaded some of the feedback documents that they gave to me. There's a couple documents. There was like the something called the Manga Basics, which I'll be going over in future YouTube videos, as well as a list of all of the different like Kodansha awards that they offer that they would like us to submit to, as well as sort of like a basic terminology sheet. And I'll be going over all these resources in future videos for like educational purposes and stuff. But yeah, thank you very much to all of my patrons. I really appreciate you guys. You guys help make the channel possible and give me encouragement, and I love getting to see you guys react to things on Patreon. If you guys would love to see more videos in the future, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and I guess I will see you next time. Take it easy and have a wonderful day. Ciao.